Hey guys, Sam Stein here with the Bulwark. Look, last week there was a story about whether Kamala Harris lied about working at McDonald's and failing to put it on her resume. In honor of that and in honor of Labor Day, we did a video where we interviewed everyone at the Bulwark, asking them what their first job was, how much they earned, what they did, and more importantly, if they put it on the resume. Enjoy.
My first job, I'm such a dork that my first job was in politics. I was an intern on a governor's campaign in the summer in high school, but it paid no money. And so what the campaign manager also owned a liquor store. So in addition to being an intern on the campaign, I also stocked the shelves at the liquor store and put beer on the shelves. And I was in the freezing cold fridge putting beer up on the shelves. And the biggest bonus of that job was that when the guy at the front desk stole fake IDs, I got to go through them to see if there were any that might work for some of my friends.
My first job was waiting tables at Union Station at an Italian chain restaurant called Fusi. I'd never waited tables before, but I got the job through a friend. I just moved to DC, and somehow, because I was not going to be carrying trays and a runner would be doing that, I was allowed to be a waitress.
I had a lot of jobs through high school and beginning of college, but the most memorable from that time was the summer after my first year of college. I came back to my hometown to become a marketing intern at the largest pork rind factory in the Midwest. I came on to help with brand research for some of our other extruded snack products, to assist with R&D occasionally for seasoning and flavoring for different products that we made. And I even at one point conducted taste tests at the mall to determine if the new non-sugar sweetener that we were using in one of our products that was less carcinogenic was as tasty as the last one.
One of my very first jobs was working in the Consumer Affairs Division of Nabisco Incorporated. They put me in the Respond to Consumer Complaints Department, where I would actually have to open these letters and respond to them, where people would claim that they had found rat droppings in their Oreo cookies, or the tail of a mouse, or in some cases, worse things. And so our job was to write a very nice letter to the consumer and say we were very sorry that this happened, and we were sending them a little package to express how much we were sorry. And it was a huge box, big crate of Nabisco products. Major life lesson that I learned from this horrible job was that if you complain to big companies, you can get free stuff. And so I applied this to my own life. I didn't make anything up. I didn't claim to find rat tails, but I did write to a makeup company and say, I don't think this is really the right shade for me. And sure enough, they sent me some free stuff.
My first job wasn't technically a job. So I started skateboarding, and when you start getting really good at skateboarding, you start going through boards really quickly. You break them, you're jumping down big things, and everything breaks and wears out way faster, and it gets really expensive really fast. So one of the solutions was to get a job. One of those could have been bussing tables at the restaurant near where I grew up. I had a better idea. I decided to just go to my local skate shop, Fat Cat Surf Shop, which, rest in peace, no longer exists. But I wanted to just be on the skate team, and so I submitted clips of me doing a few handrails, skating some bowls, and they said, sure, come skate, and they gave me a t-shirt, and from then on I was getting either free or discounted decks and wheels and trucks and everything I needed.
My first job was working for a PR company in Washington, D.C. I basically ran their video department. I think I was 22.
One of my first jobs, if not the first job, was I was a delivery man for my family's company, which was a sort of bathroom supply company in Connecticut. And so I did a delivery truck service where I would drop off things like toilets and sinks and plumbing parts to construction sites, whether they were commercial or real estate.
A youth soccer referee was my first job. And I can tell you, so it's one of these things where I signed out. I love soccer. I grew up in England. I spent a little time in England. I loved the sport, loved playing it, loved refereeing it, had to do a whole class, learn how to where the flags go and who gets cards for what. But it was funny. At the time I was 15. My dad would kind of come and like surreptitiously sit in the background to make sure that none of the individuals who I was refereeing decided to murder me on the way to the parking lot, which was, you know, I had to get a ride anyway because I couldn't drive. He was like, "I'll just stick around here in the Volvo. We'll wait for you," which was always, which I always thought was a little overblown until one day when I almost got murdered at a youth soccer game.
The first job that I was legally 16, I wasn't really 16, was working at a Wendy's in Austin, Texas. I did everything at the Wendy's. Mostly I ran the grill. I ran the chili too, which I want to tell people about the chili after you're through, turning the burgers. The ones that are too burned to serve, you scrape them through the hole, they go into a bin, and they became the chili. I can't swear what Wendy's does now, but that's what they did back then. Also did fries, washed dishes, mopped floors, whatever they needed.
My first job was when I was 14 years old. I lived with my grandparents for the summer because they live in rural Iowa, and I went up to detassel corn for seed conglomerate DuPont Pioneer up there. So basically, you're out in a field. It's like 5 a.m. You're wearing hospital scrubs because it's soaking wet, but you don't want to get chopped up by the leaves of the corn plants, and you're just pulling the tops of the corn stalks right off. It's a good time. It is perfectly legal. I'm not a child labor law expert, but you are allowed at the age of 14 to do work in the state of Iowa, younger actually, for farm work on a family farm. But yes, if you are a seed conglomerate like DuPont Pioneer, you need to wait till those kids are 14 before you can start schlepping them out to the fields.
I earned, I think, something like $350 a week, maybe, for my work. I was worried at one point that my paychecks were going to be garnered because as part of my duties, I had to occasionally seal packages, and I made the mistake of doing this one time over a glass-topped conference table, which I shattered with a tape gun, and which cost over $700 to replace, but fortunately was insured.
I think minimum wage was about $3 an hour, and that's what I got.
We got some leftover food. We got some free food. It was delicious. We were paid nothing. Everything was tips. You'd get a heavily taxed, low-wage paycheck that turned out to be like $2.43 every other week. And all our money came in cash tips.
I don't remember the hourly wage. There was a lot of weird shenanigans we always kind of felt going on with the paperwork and everything. Technically worked for a subcontractor who tracked all our hours and things like that, and we kind of had to take her word for it, how much we were making. But it was all a lot more money than we'd ever seen at that point in our lives.
I earned nothing, as I said, on the internship, and I worked many, many hours. Luckily, I'm privileged. Thank you to my parents. How much did I earn at the liquor store? Minimum, like literally nothing. I don't know, $9 an hour or something.
I am not going to discuss how much I made.
In terms of actual dollars, zero. In terms of goods, I don't even know.
I don't recall exactly. It was probably minimum wage. I do remember that since I had no skills, the only skill that was required at the time was that you be able to type. And I had learned how to type in schools.
I did not get like a family sweetener, to be clear. It was probably something like, $7.50 an hour, maybe a little less because the minimum wage was about that at the time. Free coffee, but the coffee was not that great.
It was probably... Oh, I a couple grand over the course of a year, maybe a little bit less than that, but it was not a bad amount of money.
Would I do this job again? If I had to pay for crack, yes.
Would I do the job again? Sure. If things really get bad at home and, my husband divorces me and we lose all our life savings, absolutely, I'm ready. Nabisco, if you're listening, I'm there.
Yeah, I'd do it again. It's the family business. It's still operating. And, there's a certain freedom to, driving the truck, the open-ended truck. You're your own boss on the road. I enjoyed that.
I am tempted in retirement to wait tables again. I love people. You find them at their best when they're at a meal. As a reporter, I have found people not in the mood to talk to me. When people sit down at a meal, they're their best, and I love people, and it was the best job I've ever had.
Absolutely not. I would never do it again. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I'm past that moment in my life as well.
I do not think that I would do this job again. The images that are burned into my mind are of the raw material coming into the factory for the pork rinds. There were these conveyor belts that came in from these refrigerated trucks, and I just remember box after soggy box coming in and quivering with these squares of pork skin, sometimes with hair visible on them or dyes from commercial tattoos and branding identifying the farm that they came from, still visible on these squares. And they just, they were rolling in, they were like dripping off, and you had to walk through all this grease. I came home every day smelling like pork grease. I had to wear a beard net, which was its own indignity, and the factory was extraordinarily loud. So all that to say, I don't think I would do that job again if given the option.
I still skate, but so I'm still doing it again, but I'm not doing it for anything other than for the fun of it.
Would I do it again? Sure, with the caveat that I would have to stay at the lower. At a certain point in the refereeing game, you have to do fitness tests. If you want to referee like a UEFA game or something, you have to be able to run 1,500 meters in under some amount of time. I don't remember what the actual numbers are. You have to be like healthier than I am right now to do, real high level, I think even like collegiate or maybe even high school level refereeing. You have to actually pass a fitness test. I don't know that I could. Unless I could do the entire fitness test on the elliptical, which is how I get most of my exercise now, I don't know that would be ideal.
I hated the cold. I hated the cold of being in the fridge. I loved working at the liquor store. I could see myself in retirement, like being the cashier at a liquor store, because that was fun, like learning the new wines and the new microbrews. And so I felt smart, like especially at age 16, I knew more about microbrews than anybody in high school. But I hated the cold of the stocking.
Is this job on my resume? Of course not. None of the early jobs that I had is on my resume. In fact, I don't think any job except for post-college made it to my resume, and I worked many years before that. So, no.
This job never ended up on a resume.
I never put it on a resume.
No, it's not on my resume, but I would not be ashamed to put it on my resume currently. Torrington Supply Company, everyone should get their bathroom products and parts from there. It's a great, great company.
I imagine some of those very, very early resumes, like when I was going around trying to get a job at Quiznos or McDonald's. Quiznos is where I ended up in high school. I probably had it on there. I'm like, hey, look, I've worked hard for the money before. I've done the another day, another dollar thing before. So I think those very early resumes, sure, but I bet it kind of got knocked off the one pager pretty quick.
Well, the thing is I've actually I don't really have a resume. I didn't even really apply to this job. I kind of got it by someone I knew who worked there getting fired. So basically I emailed that person's boss and I was like, hey, do you guys need video people? And they were like, yeah. And then I got hired that day.
This job is one that I included on my resume for other college jobs and never after.
Well, yes, but only when I was applying to McDonald's. Because the McDonald's is a step up. I had an actual job that I could put on my resume. They hired me immediately. They were like, this kid's going places.
I never put the job in my resume, in part because of some of the quasi-legal dealings that we were just discussing, but also in part because I don't think stocking liquor store shelves would have done me any good for future jobs working on political campaigns.
Has my time at Wendy's ever been on a resume? It may have been for a couple of years when I was applying for jobs like that. However, since I went into politics and became a candidate for vice president and then president of the United States, I have not felt the need, have not even felt that it was wise to put the Wendy's experience on my resume.